This is really exciting to be offering you the first in a series of artists and social transformation type people talks. And it's kind of exciting because people are famous in other places, but they're not always really well known at home for what they do. So I'm hoping one of the objectives or one of the outcomes of this is to be able to introduce you to people who are doing amazing things right here, as well as bring in people from away and people from the greater Maine community. A couple thoughts that if you wish to be receiving notifications about future talks, please get Seth your email and we'll put you on a special contact a listing. And we're also having an arts and health mixer open to public, open to artists, open to organizations, open to faculty, staff, students, and it's not a formal agenda. It's really just an opportunity for people who are interested in talking about arts and health to come together and have a little fun. So Seth can get you that information as well. And it's my pleasure today, as a part of the initiative from the School of Social Work and its applied arts and social justice efforts these days, to introduce you to our first set of talkers and artists. So Chris Hall here from the university, and she's the coordinator for the Center for Excellence in Interprofessional Education. And Elizabeth McClellan, who is the director and I believe the founder for Partners for World Health. And one of the other things that's so exciting about this is that this is actually an interprofessional endeavor, and it's in the making, it's in the doing, and we're not just talking about, yeah, it'd be nice if we did interprofessional work. This is actually a manifestation of that. So I'll get out of the way and remind you to use the mics, because we are being recorded for June. So keep them fairly close to your mouth if you would. And Elizabeth, this one's for you. So enjoy the talks.
If nobody minds, Dave, can I sit? Nobody, meaning Dave, yeah. So hi, my name's Chris. I came to the university 3 years ago. Before that, I worked in theater, and I was an artist, am an artist. And one of the hallmarks of an artist talk, if you haven't been to one before, is that it's horribly egocentrical. It is a talk about the artist and her process. So I'm going to try to get through that in about 2 minutes so that we have time to talk about the activism and the use of art in activism. But I think it's useful to hear where someone came from so you know how they got where they are today. For me, I was the costume shop supervisor at the University of Southern Maine, and I was a costume designer, and that is a shot of my previous office. Full of eager students whom I taught to sew, and together we costumed all the shows for 10 years, and I did design as well on the side. So here is an example of a costume that I designed and built and appeared on the stage. So the thing about theater is that it doesn't happen in a vacuum. There's a huge team that's responsible for a lot of different parts of what go on. My part was usually just the costumes. And it's an application of knowledge upon bodies in motion, right? I'm taking what I know, what I research, what I intuit about the text and the character, and I'm applying that to a body in motion. What you do in the health professions is to take your knowledge, your intuition, and apply it to bodies who are hopefully still in motion. So you have sharp instruments. This was my sharp instrument. But I think many of our goals were the same. For art, your outcome, you want your audience to feel, you want them to laugh, cry, be moved, see something exciting and different. As a healthcare professional, you want wellness, you want health. Both of those sets of goals are very intangible, and both of them are often very difficult to achieve. The standards are high for both, and the standards for teamwork and communication are very high for both. So here's a design for a Inuit folk tale. We have the princess of the spirit of the sun, and that was spirit of the dream. So you get a little look at the process there from drawing, and that was a realized costume that I made. Here's something from Bach at Leipzig, which is set in the late 1700s about the cutthroat world of classical music. And those are all from plays, so I took my inspiration from the text and what the rest of the team came up with as a goal for the audience experience. This is from an opera, and when you deal with opera, you bring music in as an additional element of the process, and this is a very, very bad woman in this opera, and the director's instructions were that when she came onto the stage, the temperature in the room was supposed to drop 30 degrees. And it did. She was extremely intense, a fabulous voice, and I have to say I'm very proud of my costume. The other inspiration was of a snake. So you can see the striations, you can see the cap coming down of a serpent. Those are also actual historical details. So between the research and the inspiration, we created the costume. And then we have dance. There is no text for dance. It's just the music and the movement, and you have to make the most out of that. And in my case, I did it using costumes. So this was based on Fahrenheit 451, Ray Bradbury's story, and the choreographer wanted it to look like they were dressing themselves all out of the same trash heap. Fahrenheit 451 is about burning books, and a modern evocation of writing is the keyboard. And so this is where I started to really start to dig to using trash as a source for my material, because I was working in a state theater department in a college that had no money. And for theatrical people, recycling is a natural. You always save your costumes, your props, your set pieces when you can, and you use them over and over and over again. So my movement to trash was a natural outgrowth of that. And this was just one of my favorite costumes I've ever done. It was just very fun. And the thing about this dance, it was 1 minute and 30 seconds long. It was just a flash of the inspirational, joyous movement. And it was so fun, but unfortunately, I only got to see it like 4 times with the costume on it, which adds up to less than 5 minutes. But I think that it speaks to the ethereal nature of whatever we all do, whether it's healthcare or art, because it's a moment in time, unless you're a master painter and someone is going to collect you and hang you in the Guggenheim. Some more of my artistic journey, I can't get away from text. And so I did some altered books, and this is in the collection of the group called Booklyn in New York City. He took it right out of the opening at the library. It didn't even get to go into circulation, which was exciting. This is my self-portrait, and she comes with me wherever I go. And for me, this is the first art that I made that was about health, because it's about stress and it's about having eczema and what that feels like. It's not pain, it's itching, it's a different thing, and it's treated in no useful way whatsoever. And I was feeling a little frustrated by that, and you can certainly handle and look at that if you want to afterwards. So I'm working at USM. I feel the need to get an MFA. God knows why. And I started to feel very strongly about how clothes are made, because I know how clothes are made. I know how long it takes, I know what a pain it is, and I know what it's like to have my clothing be used for a very short time and then possibly never seen again. This is something that I shared, or I felt like I shared, with the people who make the clothes that we wear. Because unless you're buying from American-made manufacturers that are definitely treating their people right and paying them a living wage, you're wearing something that was made in a country that you've never been to and probably never will be in. So I started to do some research. I got into an MFA program, and I tried to explore how can I tell this story through art, to build empathy in the consumer, to consider what you're buying, how long you use it, how soon you throw it away. And so I went from a fiber artist to a podcast director and performer and script writer, because of course I can't get away from words. So when you all came in, you got a pocket, and I made them out of blue wrap because we have a bag of blue wrap here. And at the end of this little audio clip, there'll be instructions about what to do with your pocket.
From American Public Media, this is Marketplace. From the Frank Stanton Studios in Los Angeles, I'm Kai Rizdal. Today is Thursday, it's April 6th, and it is great to have you here. Walmart is counting on the Easter Bunny for some help at the cash register. The world's biggest retailer reported March sales today. They were up just a tad, but the company is expecting a big boost this month. It's hard to believe, but all those fuzzy bunnies and colored eggs can bump sales as much as 6%. There is nothing warm and fuzzy at all, though, about Walmart's image. The company has been the target of persistent criticism from labor groups over its business practices. Sarah Nix has this story of one downloadable voice fighting the fight.
People listen to their MP3 players just about everywhere, on the subway, at the gym, and in stores. But walking around the Walmart in Scarborough, Maine, while listening to artist Chris Hall's podcast can be distinctly unsettling.
After you pass the registers, continue straight and count the aisles on your left. The razors are in the 8th aisle. The Gillette ones that I want to stop at are the first things on the left. Once you get there, act natural and wait for me.
It can be hard to act natural while Hall is sweetly instructing you to look under shelving or handle merchandise that you have no intention of buying. Hall has put together a carefully timed audio tour of this southern Maine store for her Master of Fine Art thesis. Anyone can download it from her website for an in-store lesson on the dark side of low prices.
Are you in the razor aisle now? Look up and to your left. There's a security camera bubble right over you. Smile.
Walmart's customer surveillance is an ongoing theme throughout the 24-minute tour.
It's not just that you're doing something wrong, but actually you're doing something that you're fundamentally not supposed to be doing there.
Chris Thompson, a Walmart shopper and art professor who recently took the tour, says once Hall pointed out dozens of security cameras, he was self-conscious about standing in the store, hearing information the mega retailer might not want him to know.
It makes you feel like you're in some sense an enemy and not a consumer.
As the tour guides the listener on a circuitous path by the guns and craft supplies to the women's clothing department, Hall also talks about the labor conditions in the countries where most Walmart merchandise is produced. At one point, she asks the listener to examine a pair of pants while listening to a true story of one textile worker in Mexico, the kind of worker the artist claims who's typical of the workforce in Walmart's overseas suppliers.
She was told to make the quota, she'd have to sew 360 pockets on per hour. That's one every 9 seconds. Trace your finger around the pocket. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 pocket. And the other, 9. Have you ever used a sewing machine? 7. I can assure you that this quota is impossible to meet.
Hall's description of these kinds of overseas labor practices are the most haunting material in the tour. And while Hall's tone never gets strident, in a recent interview she says she does want to make a point.
Walmart can do better for everyone. When they make $10 billion in profit, they can do better than getting us cheap pants. They can get us pretty cheap pants and still pay people living wages.
Hall is now making a tour that will work in any Walmart store. In Scarborough, Maine, I'm Sarah Nix for Marketplace.
And that is Marketplace.
So that was how I expressed my intention to get people to pay a little bit more attention to how they spend their money and how often you discard and buy essentially new clothing. So that's where I'm at, and the chair of the art department at USM came to me and said, I've met this fabulous person, Elizabeth McClellan, and she has Partners for World Health, and she's putting on a fashion show, and she has some free materials she'd like some sewing to happen on for the fashion show. We want to make clothes. And so here I am in this poor state school with all these students to teach how to sew, and I'm being offered free materials, which is amazing. And there are also free materials with a social justice bent, because if you think about how much trash, and Elizabeth will talk about that, hospitals create and throw away, what she does is a fabulous redirect of that, and it was a great lesson to teach my students. So there's the poster for Project Runway. And so we got bags of blue wrap, just like are sitting there. And depending upon their level of sewing expertise, we made placemats. We made recyclable bags, which almost all the recyclable bags are made of something like blue wrap, it seems like to me, very light, not recyclable, actually. The bags themselves, you have to use them over and over again to make them work. And we made some ties, and I told them that it was for a Project Runway thing, and I told them to go away and sell the ties. Make me some pictures of you wearing the ties and sell those ties. So those are some students selling the ties. And so the art department chair, Jan, and I got together, and we're going to make her a dress to wear at the fashion show. And because we're complete art nerds, we decided that we would use the Yves Saint Laurent homage to Mondrian and nod to Picasso's Blue Period. Because that seemed like a good idea to us at the time. So I started to cut and paste using the directions that I had received from her. And there you have the product of it, which was worn at the fashion show, ultimately by someone who was not Jan Paraback, whose name I can't remember, but there she is, and she looked great. And there were other submissions in the fashion show. This is Florence Nightingale, made by a colleague of mine. Here is this dress with the surgical gloves was incredibly sexy. I mean, you just wouldn't expect it, but it was amazingly sexy on stage because all she was wearing was surgical gloves. Wow! And then, of course, this cute as a button thing here was fabulous. I imagine she was sweating, but she worked it. She did not look like she was suffering up there. She was having a great time. So I was jealous when I saw that. It's like, oh, I could have made that out of surgical gloves, but I didn't. So that's a little bit about my journey, and that's how I arrived at the Partners for World Health opportunity with the Blue Wrap. And I want to go ahead and turn it over to Elizabeth now for her presentation. And then I hope afterwards we can talk, and if you have any questions about anything, I'd be happy to answer them. And I'm going to run the computer, so if you want to.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me. Yes, I am. My name is Elizabeth McClellan, and is this on? A little bit of a background. I'm a registered nurse, and I spent many years living in Saudi Arabia after I finished graduate school, working for Aramco, the Arab American Oil Company. And we have a big hospital over there in Dhahran of 450 beds, and part of what my job was to do international recruiting and to travel to places like Pakistan and India and Sri Lanka and Philippines, et cetera, and recruit a variety of different healthcare professionals to come back and work in the Middle East. And when you're a nurse, when you go into hospitals in the middle of northern Pakistan and Sri Lanka, et cetera, and you meet other nurses, even if you don't speak the language, there's an immediate connection because we do the same thing here that they do over there. And we want the best for all of our patients, whether they're here in the United States or over there. And what's lacking over there are medical supplies and also education and training. And so when I came back to live here in the United States, I took a job at Maine Medical Center. And in 2007, I started collecting medical supplies. I went to Rich Peterson, whom you know as the president and CEO of Maine Med, and I asked him if I could put a few little boxes of brown boxes at nursing units and would they educate the nurses and the housekeepers to collect all of the items that were left behind in a discharged room. So if you go to visit patients and you see all the stuff on the windowsill, the dressing supplies, the unused catheters, the IV solutions, IV tubing, unused, et cetera, alcohol swabs, soap, toothbrushes, toothpaste. And so we started to collect those because all of that will go to the trash. Everything goes in the trash bag and it goes to the landfill from hospitals. So instead now they're collecting those things and putting them in the recycle bins. And so we, when I started to do that, Rich Peterson said, oh, sure, go ahead. What a nice thing to do. That's great. And I think as I was walking down the hallway, I said to myself, he has no clue. I love him dearly, and we have a great facility here in Maine that is, works wonders over there. But I don't think he really realized how big of an issue this was. Now we're in 39 different facilities here in the state of Maine. We collect from 3 hospitals in New Hampshire. We collect from nursing homes, hospitals, private individuals, loan closets, community clinics, you name it. We're willing to take everything to make sure that it doesn't end up in the landfill and doesn't end up in some trash dump somewhere here in the state. So to begin with, that gives you a little introduction about myself, but I'll just show you a little video which provides a bit of history and also shows you some of our places here in the state where we recycle and reprocess our stuff.
I am a nurse, so in my experience, basically a surgical nurse. So I deal with wound treatment, burn wounds, all kinds of wounds. I did also had experience open heart. So in Haiti, I don't know what the situation is gonna be, but I know that I will be there and I will just do what I have to do. So the worst was having these burn children, like infant, and to see this patient that the parent no money, they don't even have money to buy medication for pain. This poor child that I treated, she was like 35% burn of her body, and her mother didn't have a penny, and she's lying on a very dirty sheet, a towel as a matter of fact, I remember. She does not have any pillows because the mom cannot buy pillows. And I have to clean her up. And I would remember this until forever. And I was like, okay, quick think. First, I cleaned the wound with my sterile kit that I brought in from Partners for World Health. And then I needed a pillow under her head because she's getting contraction because this is all burned. Her hands is all blister and hanging. So I ran to the closet and find an empty boxes that we had medical supply. I rip it apart and my tears were coming down and I just said, how could this happen? I wish I could take her to any hospital in the U.S., take with me, and I know she will survive. I rip it apart, put it together, these pieces of cardboard, tape it, and I wrap it with a sterile blue wrap that was with me. I put it under her head and put it under her arm to elevate that. And then I wrap her with all this sterile stuff. And I said to the doctor, give a list. And I said, this is what you do twice a day. I told to the mother, if you could take this home, this sheet, these towels, wash it every day, so she have something to keep it warm. Then I come home, and I'm always thinking about this baby. 6 months later, I went back to the hospital in Haiti, and then I said, okay, I didn't dare to ask because I was so afraid that she didn't make it, but the doctor heard about me, and she said, oh, I'm so glad to see you back. And she gave me a big hug and she said, our baby survived.
My name is Elizabeth McClellan, and I am the founder of Partners for World Health. And our purpose is to collect the discarded medical supplies that are in hospitals, nursing homes, other healthcare facilities, as well as from private homes, and bring them down to our warehouse where they're sorted and organized and repackaged and made ready for shipping to third world countries and hospitals and clinics throughout the third world.
My name's Vivian Russi. I'm a new RN, and I became involved with Partners for World Health right from the beginning when it was still in Elizabeth's house. Elizabeth put out a call for someone to come over and help sort items in her basement. And I did, and I was shocked.
It was overwhelming, the amount of stuff that we were throwing away that was perfectly good. And I'm not a big environmentalist, or wasn't before, but to know that there were things that could save people's lives that we were throwing away and filling our landfills with was really disappointing and horrifying to me.
When a patient has been discharged from a hospital room or from a nursing home room, all of the medical supplies that are left behind in the room ordinarily go to the trash. And so now we've educated nurses and housekeepers in a variety of different facilities to put them in the recycle bins. So volunteers will come in, pick up the recycled items, bring those bag loads of discarded medical supplies to our warehouse.
Everybody who comes here says the same thing. They're just incredulous as to the fact that so much of this material is being thrown out and wasted, and the reality of it is it doesn't need to be. It really doesn't. This isn't garbage. There's nothing wrong with this. This is a syringe. It's sterile. It could easily be put back on the shelf and reused again. But because of the way the rules are written around here, we are not allowed to do that sort of thing, and so we end up discarding all these materials. And there's absolutely nothing wrong. I mean, I think it's absolutely amazing to think that this is garbage when the reality of it is this is perfectly good materials, that can be used. More of those down there, the Kendalls. Keep it coming. All righty, let's go. All right, these are all personal.
This is a pediatric oxygen mask that was used once and tossed. There's no reason to throw this out because the oxygen masks that are hooked up to the only oxygen tank in a small hospital in Cambodia, there's one mask. And every patient that comes in uses the same mask. We use one mask for a half hour and then we throw it out. So there's no reason that this needs to be discarded. This can be given, we can give them 150 oxygen masks that we are just going to toss.
It's a little bit dispiriting on the one hand when you learn about the waste, but it's also inspiring when you learn how you can help. And I think the more you learn about the people here who are making this organization work and the missions overseas that they run on a regular basis, the more inspired people will be to support this organization.
To take medical supplies and to arrive in a country and a little facility that has nothing, they are so appreciative of everything that we bring. They're overwhelmed, they're surprised, and then when we sit down and say, this is for free, we're giving this to you, we want to help you, and then we create another list of things that we might be able to bring back the next time around. They're absolutely so appreciative of this.
I think anybody who has the opportunity to travel overseas to any of these countries, their life would be changed. It's one thing to know how lucky we are. It's another thing to actually see how little others have to make us very thankful. We have so much and they have so little. I was fortunate enough to go to the Dominican Republic with my daughter. We went on a mission after bringing some supplies down together. And we were able to go out into the bateys in the Dominican, where many Dominicans as well as Haitians live, and see that they don't even have clean water, much less clean syringes or vitamins or Band-Aids.
All right. I'm always amazed. I was in Ethiopia, like I said, I was in Ethiopia recently. We performed 20 surgeries, we saw over 400 patients. And everything we used came out of this warehouse. Everything we used, all the sutures, all of the drapes, all of the surgical materials, the meshes, everything we did was used from here. Stuff that would have been discarded. We saved probably over 450 patients we took care of while we were there.
3 reasons why this is so important. We're lowering the cost of doing business in hospitals by lowering disposal fees. We're preventing the impact on the environment, and we're making ready all of these medical supplies for people that are less fortunate than we are. It's a win-win. However way you cut it, it's a win-win.
If you care about what's going on for those less fortunate, they are incredibly warm, wonderful people who just were born into a country that is struggling, and it's really our duty as people and human beings to help those less fortunate.
We have no trouble getting unbelievable amounts of supplies that we could distribute worldwide. The problem is we have to find some way to raise the money to ship them there.
We need to raise money. If we had the money coming in, then we would be able to ship a container load out of here every month. We have the stuff. We have the big stuff and the little stuff to be able to fill a container and to meet some of the needs of these places throughout the world.
I think that this organization is performing a great community service within this state. I know that people say, oh, well, you're bringing this all to the third world. Well, we're not bringing it all to the third world. We do donate locally. We do bring things to the free clinic, to the homeless shelters. But we also are, again, that service learning part. We're trying to instill in our younger people the need to help those that don't have what you have. And I think it's really important to have organizations like that that can do that.
It changes you because you reach out with your heart instead of your stuff, and you make a difference in people's lives. And when you hold somebody's hand and you realize that the smile and the energy that was created between the conversation that you had with them made a difference in their lives, is so important. You come back a changed person. And when you come back here and you go to work in a hospital, you remember, I'm not going to throw any of that away. I'm going to make sure that we take that down to the warehouse to Partners for World Health, because it's going to end up in the hands of someone who really needs it somewhere else in the world. So, it gives you a little bit of an overview of where we were when we did that video, which was in 2012. And right now, just to give you a little bit of an update, we have six locations now here in the state of Maine. One is our major headquarters, where we just moved to a 2112 Broadway in South Portland, near the other half of the old Coast Guard PX building. That's where our office is, and our distribution warehouse for the small things that you saw in this other picture with the warehouse where everybody was working. We have another 25,000 square feet in Scarborough for the cold storage, where we have 86 beds. I just went to Cedars Nursing Home this morning, and they're going to donate the other 100 beds. And bedside tables and overbed tables. We have about 150 wheelchairs, 1,000 pairs of crutches. We have exam tables. We have 6 operating room lights that we just took off the ceiling in the operating room at Franklin Memorial Hospital that are $6,000 a piece, that they didn't need anymore because their capital equipment budget came through, and they bought 6 new ones. So they were all going to go to the dump unless we took them. So we have we have a big load of stuff coming down here today of ventilators and respiratory equipment from Penn Bay Medical Center. We have another location in downtown Portland where we have a biomedical service center, where we take all of the small machines like EKG machines, pulse oximeters, small respiratory type of equipment that we take down there, and we have these volunteer biomedical engineers that have a key to the place, and they go down after work and they putter around and they make sure that every item works, because we don't ship anything in a container unless we can be guaranteed that it will work on the other side. And for example, yesterday I was down in Biddeford at the Biddeford Animal Hospital, and they have 50 EKG machines that a variety of hospitals have given to them over time that they don't need for their facility, and they're giving an operating room table, and they're giving all of that to us. So, you know, when you think of an operating room table for a dog, you can put a pediatric child. It's the same type of an operating room table. Why should it go to the dump? So we have those 3 locations here, and we have 3 other collection sites, one in Rockport, one in Skowhegan, one in Lewiston, and actually 4, another one in Orono, because the University of Maine in Orono has created an official Partners for World Health chapter. So the students now negotiate and have worked with St. Joseph's Hospital And the people that are involved in that chapter collect all those medical supplies. They store them in their dorm rooms. They store them in a garage. And then they bring them down once a month to our location and then volunteer their time on the Saturday that they drive down. So it's really growing. It's all an entirely volunteer organization. No one is paid, including myself. And so we reach out to universities, to students, to young students, as well as elderly people, as well as Goodwill and Morrison Developmentally Delayed. We have programs for the developmentally delayed that meet on Tuesdays and Fridays, and they come in with their supervisors and sort through a variety of different small items that they can handle under direction and supervision. There are other organizations here in our country that do this. We're the only one in Maine and New Hampshire. There's a big one out of Atlanta called MedShare. We only ship 6 container loads, which is about 40,000 pounds per container last year alone, but that's a lot of medical supplies. 6 containers means about $1.5 million worth of discarded medical supplies that went out in those containers to people that have nothing in many parts of the world, in Africa and Southeast Asia and South America. The only difference between our organization and the other ones in the country is that we are the organization that provides medical supplies, but we also orchestrate medical mission programs. And we take doctors and nurses on our medical mission programs for a week to 2 weeks, depending upon where we're going. And we also take students. We have a group of nursing students from St. Joe's that goes to Senegal, with a group of students from University of Maine that will be going to Rwanda, and we're reaching out to different universities to bring students with us. So that's a unique thing that none of these other organizations do, partly because none of these other organizations were started by a nurse who sees this in a different light, that we really just don't want to deliver the stuff. We want to actually provide the services and create opportunities for people to have that experience in their lives. So
Great. I'd love to be able to have you ask questions as well, and I'll if you'd use a microphone so we can record this for the online presentation of this. As I get to people who have hands, could you talk about how the runway show and the arts has really helped the mission of Partners for World Health?
Blue Wrap, which is this fabric that you see over here, is used in every hospital in every state in our country, and it sterilizes all the surgical supplies for the operating room. Remember, we used to use cotton years ago, until about the 70s when we became a disposal society, and this fabric is woven like cotton. Bacteria travels in a straight line from point A to point B, so when it runs into a thread, like in cotton, it won't move. Therefore, it cannot penetrate into the package, and all of the items that are in the package end up being sterile. So Blue Wrap was created very similar to what cotton is, and we thought that that was a good thing. Everybody still does. One piece of Blue Wrap ranges in price from $1.75 to $4.50 a piece. And we can use, in a simple gallbladder operation, you can come out with 18 pieces of clean Blue Wrap. And you'll also know that this is double. It's 2 pieces. So every sterile item, all these sterile trays are wrapped in double. So when you start to add up, one big surgical case like cardiac surgery, they could create 50 to 60 pieces of Blue Wrap. And this is a plastic product that does not disintegrate. So it started to come in like in the bag loads. And I said, gee, we should have our own Project Runway. But I don't know how to sew worth beans. My idea of sewing is calling a tailor. So I reached out to University of Southern Maine and some of the other schools. We had students from UNE and students from Southern Maine Community College and other designers, and we had our first Project Runway, and it was really incredible. The designs that were created out of this fabric they were very, very creative. And we produced our first video that time. People started to learn about what Blue Wrap was all about. Blue Wrap button came out of University of Southern Maine students, and this has become everybody knows the Blue Wrap button now, and they know that it means Partners for World Health. And when we travel, we always give away our Blue Wrap buttons and to the people when we leave, to let them know that this means when we give you the Blue Wrap button that we promise you that we will be back. that we're not an organization that just wants to come one time for the experience, that we really want to create an ongoing experience in education and training and build capacity. And so it becomes a real emotional trip when we're leaving to give away these Blue Wrap buttons. And it's even more emotional when you go back and they have them all on. So so thank you very much, USM, who developed these buttons.
Well, you've partly answered my question, but like, what would you do? Like, how do you know that it would be sanitary? Like, what if some of the dirty ones touch those blue things?
What happens with this is that it comes in a package. The sterile items are in the package. And they put it on a table, and a nurse that's circulating in the operating room opens up the package. And she doesn't touch anything that's inside, the tray that's inside. The sterile nurse, who has a complete sterile gown on and a mask on and sterile gloves, reaches over and she picks up the tray and she carries the tray over and she puts it on the sterile field. And the patient is right there next to the sterile field. And then that Blue Wrap is pulled out by that nurse who brought it in and put it in the trash. So this is not exposed to blood, body, fluids, or anything like that. So all of this stuff that comes down to us is clean. All of the other items of Blue Wrap that are exposed to blood and body fluids in the operating room are discarded in red bags, and that is disposable burned trash. So anything that is exposed to blood and body fluids is taken away in a red bag and it's burned. It's incinerated. We don't incinerate here in the state of Maine. We truck it down to Massachusetts, and all of that is burned.
Elizabeth, I have two quick questions. One is, I wonder if it's possible would it be desirable to do the blue in a disposable, in something that is sensitive to the environment? And the second question, if I may, is, so that's the little one, and the other one's probably a bigger one. Who's giving you money? How much are you getting to ship those 6 containers a year? Where do you want to grow? How do you want to grow? What size do you want to get to? And how's that working?
First, your other question about the Blue Wrap. The company that makes Blue Wrap, and there are several, but one big one is Kimberly-Clark. And they're able to sell this. I mean, there's budgets, line item budgets of $500,000 in hospitals just to buy the Blue Wrap. Everybody buys it. It's not up for discussion. They just buy it. They don't use cotton towels anymore. So it would be great if they could develop a product that would be disposable. Is it in their best interest to do that from a manufacturing cost-wise? I don't know. But unfortunately, I'm not on that road to kind of fight that story. But it really should be something that people should be addressing, especially because it ends up in the landfill. And it sits there forever and a day. It's not, it actually on the West Coast, China's buying Blue Wrap because it's a product that can be burned. And so they're baling Blue Wrap and they're shipping it to China and they're using it as a fuel resource. So we're not collecting it here. Maine Med throws it out by the bag load. Every hospital in the state is throwing it out by the bag load. It's not being baled. And being baled means you need a 25,000 square foot warehouse, machines, et cetera, and you're going to go into that industry. If you look at places like Home Depot where you go out and you see the flower pots, a lot of those flower pots are made out of recycled Blue Wrap. So there are some organizations that are out there that want to collect this. As far as the other end goes, our containers cost on average between $10,000 to $15,000, and that includes shipping and processing fees, all from Portland, Maine, all the way to wherever they're going. Like the next one that's going out of here is Rwanda, and it's going to Kigali, and then there's a hospital there that has paid for the shipping and the processing fees, and they're going to receive $250,000 worth of medical supplies in their container. So it's a pretty good investment for them. Now, when we negotiated with them about these fees, and I explained to them that we're a nonprofit and we don't have a lot of funding to pay for all the shipping. We have to raise the money or someone else has to give a portion of it. And they said, not a problem, we'll wire you the money. They wired us the money. Now, where did the money come from? Any thoughts on where that $15,000 came from? It came from you. Because you paid your taxes into the U.S. government that went into the foreign aid budget. And that money was distributed to all of these hospitals and places throughout the world through USAID, United States Agency on International Development. So they were given a pocket of money and they had it in their coffers. So that their tax dollars are at work in terms of, and I like that because we're giving it to our government and at the same time now it's going out and it's coming back. That's why they had that money. And so there's other money out there in a lot of these countries, and we want to work together with them to raise some of this money to make awareness, to make everybody aware of how we can fundraise to fund some of the shipping. We also, when we do the container loads, we follow up with a medical mission. And the medical mission is at no charge to them. Everyone goes for free. I mean, everyone pays their own way, and we provide all of the services, the education, training, the surgery for free. And we do teaching with nursing education, with physical therapists, and with our surgeons that come with us. And that's a big added plus for them.
Chris, as an artist, do you have additional thoughts on what to use the waste materials for arts and awareness of this type of project?
Well, last time I was at the warehouse with a group of PT students sorting things out, I noticed that they were throwing away. They still have to throw things away. There are things that can't be salvaged. And a lot of it was kind of pretty, which is just shows my background is not in, I don't know what they're for, but it's kind of pretty. They're interesting colors and textures and all this kind of stuff. So I got a drill press for Christmas. Not unrelated. And what I want to do is start to take some of these things and make jewelry with them. Small little plastic pieces, little metal pieces, little things that are scopes with lights that go places that I don't even want to think about, but could make really amazing jewelry. So, and I would love to be able to provide supplies to artists and jewelers who want free supplies, because who doesn't want free supplies, who might want to make interesting things out of these items, and then it could go back. If they are sold, they could give a part of it back to Partners for World Health, or it could be part of the next fashion show. I don't know. But I have my drill press now, so I'm ready to go full speed ahead.
There are quite a few things that Chris looked at the warehouse that and saw art in it that I said, okay, I really couldn't see it. And so we're open to anything, as you can imagine. And we're trying to pull some of these. Now I'm more in tune to it, so I'll pull some of these things out of the mix and say, geez, don't discard that because Chris might want that. So we got to save that. But we go to great lengths to reprocess items as well, because sometimes remember the hospitals aren't reprocessing or recycling this stuff. And because we're in this market, we don't want to just put it back out there in the trash and have it end up in the landfill. So when things come in that I know will not be used and are expired, like the extensive tubing for dialysis machines, most of the places where we ship to are not the big teaching hospitals in big cities. These are district hospitals that really don't have very much, and they don't have a dialysis machine. So and if it's expired, we will go through and reprocess that. So the hard plastic can be thrown in the recycle bin, but the paper that covers the hard plastic is not recyclable. So we take the paper off and we put that in the trash because it has a film on it, and then we recycle the hard plastic. The tubing is not recycled because it gets caught in the machines. So there's a lot to this process of trying to do it right down to the end and do it the right way.
How does your volunteer program work? I mean, how hours and ages that are allowed to help and so forth?
Sure. We have a big community service learning program at Partners for World Health. We have student groups that come down from high school students as young as 13 up to our oldest volunteer is 95, and she lives in South Portland. She comes once a week, and she works on the dressing supplies. And we do a lot with community education. So when these groups come down, whether they are business people that are doing a day of caring or a high school group or a college group, we show them our videos. We have a discussion about why this is important. We just don't bring you down and put you in the warehouse. And then we divide them up into like groups of 5 or 6 and with another point person that can work with them on certain projects. So we try to make it really educational. Then we have a wrap-up time and we talk about it, especially with students. And one group that came from Amherst, New Hampshire, they were blown away, these high school students, and they said, you know, we want to help you. And I said, well, how many, there are 20 of you in the room here, how many of you have a pair of crutches in your garage? 16 of them raised their hand. And they couldn't believe that when they started to realize how many pairs of crutches were in the room, let alone if they were to go back to their school and ask all their classmates about crutches. And so in February, they're having a drive. Instead of a bottle drive, they're having a crutch drive. And they're calling it Unclutch Your Crutch. Unclutch Your Crutch. And they're doing it in Skowhegan, New Hampshire, in the high school over there. I think that's near Amherst. And they're collecting all different types of mobility, things like wheelchairs, crutches, canes, anything. And we're going to meet them down there with our truck, and we're going to bring it all back. So that's something that we've been encouraging a lot of different high schools and to take on a project like that as students and to make them more aware of the fact that we're throwing this out. The other thing that they begin to learn is the cost of health care and how expensive things are, because we tell them that this is perfectly fine and it's $150. And by the end of 3 hours, they have a lot of questions about why is this so expensive. Now, they're not paying for their health care insurance, but everybody knows that if we throw this out, it causes the cost of health care to go up, which impacts the cost of health care insurance for all of us. So we need to really think about what we're doing and how we can do our business more effectively, more efficiently, more recognizing the waste in our society and do this differently.
Wow. Any last questions before we wrap up for today and give you a chance to mingle and grab some blue wrap, right?
Yes, there's yardage available if you want to make your own clothes or place mats. You are welcome to take some yardage.
And we are having another Blue Wrap Project Runway show actually on April 24th, and it's at USM at Hannaford Hall. The first year we did it was at the museum, and we sold out, so we needed to move to a bigger place. And we are creating there'll be a fashion show of about 15 models, and then we have 3 vignettes. The Portland Ballet is going to perform dressed in blue wrap. The Portland Opera is going to sing dressed in blue wrap. And then we have a group of 4 Filipino little boys that play the violin dressed in blue wrap. So interspersed in our show will be a few more productions. So if anyone would like to be involved in that and help volunteer for it, we're always looking for help.
That's brilliant. And what a really terrific way to kick off our, there's a question right here, kick off our Applied Arts and Social Justice series here.
I just wanted to know if you have any anything like a website that people can go and donate money towards the shipping or something.
We have a website, www.partnersforworldhealth.org. We are a legitimate 501c3 tax-exempt organization, and on the website is a donate button. If you wish to make donations for and to support containers, it's better to call first so that we can know where that you want your money to go. I think that's really important because, and then we also have a lot of contacts around here from the international community, and those people have come and they've helped. They've said, I want a container to go to South Sudan, which we have been trying to do for the last year or so, but now with so much conflict that's going on over there, it's a bit challenging. But we want to be able to, if we raise that money for South Sudan or we raise the money for Tanzania or Uganda, it goes into a special account. And so once we have it all, then it can go.
Very exciting.
I'm stunned at what you're doing, Elizabeth. It is just awesome. And I'm so, inspired by all the organizations that are all rising in this country to try to meet these needs. And I wonder how it's possible to connect these organizations to make a larger impact in our country and in the world.
The organizations like Partners for World Health, which is, as I mentioned, MedShare is in Atlanta. They have another organization in affiliation in California. There's one in Colorado. There's one in Chicago. And then there's some mom and pop shops around. But MedShare is probably the largest one that ships about 150 containers a year all over the world. That's huge. If our goal for 2014 is to ship 12, one a month. So if we can ship 12 containers out of Maine, that's pretty impressive. That's pretty impressive, all with volunteers. There is an organization called the Medical Surplus Recovery Organization, MSRO, and they've had a couple of meetings to pull together these different groups that are sporadically placed throughout the United States to come up with some guidelines, because we're really, people that started this started it just like I did in my house or in my garage. They were people that may have worked in healthcare or just saw the need and started collecting. So right now there's some organization going on to pull everybody together, which is this should be happening everywhere. Statistically, they say that we're only collecting about 6% of the stuff that we throw away. 6% of the little stuff and the big stuff, it's not acceptable. So most of it ends up in the landfill.
Well, I'm very excited that arts can be an instigator in this sort of dialogue. If you have future ideas on conversations that we should be having, artists who are doing amazing work in social transformation and social justice efforts, please let us know. We have an ongoing series. If you want information and be notified as to when those are happening, Seth over there will take your contact information. And we're looking to start with the help of the Maine Women's Writers Collection, a monthly-ish mixer for those interested in just talking with other people interested in arts and health. So thank you for being here. Please mingle. Thank you. Huge thanks to both Elizabeth and Chris for their time and efforts.